Biggest political surprise in Michigan this year, Stephen?
Oh, I think it's got to be the failure of Prop 2, the union collective bargaining constitutional amendment, and then the very swift backlash that turned the home of the UAW into a right-to-work state. I mean, I don't think I certainly never thought that Prop 2 would pass. I don't think a lot of people, though, predicted that you would actually end up with Michigan as a right-to-work state at the end of the year.
Well, biggest surprise for you?
Well, I think the Thad McCotter meltdown in a very safe Republican congressional district that led to the curious sort of candidacy of two guys who, you probably are not ready. We're not ready for Congress, and we're sending one of them there, next week.
And people don't know a lot of information still about them. So I thought that was very interesting as well. And any big winners or losers in your mind?
Lots of losers.
Lots of losers.
I think Mr. Negative.
I think Thad McCotter is a big loser and a disappointing one. I mean, I think he's an odd guy who was always very quirky, but a very
good congressman.
But a very smart man and brought, I thought, a real intellectual edge to policy debates in Washington. And in the end, it was the quirkiness that got the better of him, not the intelligence.
Bob Ficano, certainly a big political loser this year. The scandal just continued to unfold. I don't think his hold on...
That seems to have died down a little bit, and he's still in office.
And he's going to be until the next election, but I can't imagine that he's going to be able to hold that seat. So, the Ficano scandal continued to unfold. I think Bob King and Mark Brewer, they rolled their dice on this Prop 2, and I think it hurt them. It led to right to work being passed. I believe they're the big losers. Big winners are these West Michigan businessmen who pushed for right to work. I would have thought a month ago it was a long shot, and they pushed it through.
What about Matty Maroon and the bridge?
Well, I mean, I think he's not a loser yet because it's not built. I think
he's still winning because he's still collecting tolls, and he's still the only game in town.
Until you open the gates on that new bridge, he's the winner because he collects all that money every year, and obviously has enough to keep fighting it as well. I mean, I don't think that's over. I think there's going to be all kinds of court battles coming up, and who knows what else he'll pull out of his hat to try to stall this thing out.
I think Rick Snyder is a big winner this year, particularly with the Prop 2 victory, but also the way I think he's come to finally rise to political leadership in his own party. I think he's stronger. I think you can.
I think it's the other way around.
Stephen Henderson just made the most bizarre face I think I've ever seen on this show.
The way he handled the right to work, I think, brought him. A lot of people who were skeptical about him and his credentials are now behind him, and I think the way he led the whole process through, a lot of people have a lot more respect for Rick Snyder in the party.
I'll let you make your comments, and then we'll move on.
I think it's more the way he got handled in the right to work debate. I mean, this is a party that now owns this guy. They didn't before. He's now got the task of showing that he can lead. Leadership's not just going along with what your party wants. It's being able to say to him, this is the direction we're going, and I'm not going to back down no matter how much you beat me up.
So wait a minute. You called Obama a strong leader, and he can't get Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi to do anything he wants.
That's not true.
All right.
Same standard.
Look at all the stuff he's gotten passed.
So let's talk about the year that was in 2012. It's something we can all agree about, I'm sure, Detroit. So let's talk about if it was a good year for the city. A lot of things happened. The consent agreement, was it good in terms of some progress?
It was a lost year. A year ago.
A lost year. A total loss.
Because a year ago we were sitting here looking at Detroit's situation saying we're on the verge of financial collapse. We need to put in place, any kind of remedies, from the state through its emergency manager law and start the process of restructuring Detroit. A year later, we are having that same conversation. The consent agreement produced very little, if any, real progress. Only thing that's happened is the financial situation has deteriorated in that year.
Do you think it was a loss?
I think the year was a loss, and I think I still maintain that it was an idea worth trying. I think the governor deserves a lot of credit for not moving, moving very cautiously to deal with the political situation in Detroit, to not make it seem like he's coming in and just taking over. And I mean, I think there's an appropriate sensibility there on his part to that. The consent agreement didn't work, though, and there's no question that it
And
didn't
the
work.
result of that is that
And
we're closer today to bankruptcy than we would have
we
been
might
had he
be.
acted more decisively.
We might
a
be,
year ago.
although I do think that will ultimately be avoided. I think they will come up with ways to make this fiscal year work and then start working on the long-term stuff.
Any interesting leaders emerge for you in terms of Detroit?
Well, I think the only leader you have in this city, for the most part, is Gary Brown. He's the only guy who seems to
Most consistent, rational voice on council. There's no question about that. The problem is he's not been able to bring other people along consistently. The consent agreement, remember, we had 5 people on council vote for that and say that they were going to do it.
Yeah.
The trick to making it work was holding that 5 together. Neither Charles Pugh, who's the president, nor Gary, who's the president pro tem, seemed able to do that. And Pugh was sometimes the first one off running the other direction. So
Hopeful?
No, for Detroit? No, I think.
Are you hopeful about anything, Noel?
I think the process we're on now is going to lead to bankruptcy, and I do think bankruptcy in the end will be
I don't think that's a good,
productive
yeah.
because it'll wipe away a lot of debts. But you've got to get to a point where the city is growing and producing revenue, or all you're doing is chasing water down the drain.
And also, let's talk about public safety. Obviously, we lost a police chief this year, and so we're still in the process of finding a new one.
Yeah, well, I don't think you should hold out a lot of hope for that to happen until we can settle the political question in Detroit, which is who's going to be mayor, who's going to be on council. Council now has some say over that process as well. If you're a candidate for that job, why on earth would you toss your name in now with that level of uncertainty? I think we've got to sort that out first, and then maybe we'll get hopefully a chief with a record somewhere else of actually dealing with some of the problems that we have.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk about business in Michigan, the business climate in Michigan, and was it a good year for business? Was 2012 good?
A better year. I mean, it wasn't an outstanding year. There was some growth. There was some job growth, development growth. Certain segments did very, very well. Business leaders from Michigan were out with their benchmarking study at the end of December, and found that measured against our peer states, we did okay. But we didn't improve fast enough to make up for the lost decade we had economically. And so we need faster growth. But the numbers are all pointing in the right direction. They made certain recommendations I think are dead on. We've got to invest more in education and workforce training. We've got to fix our infrastructure.